That little ditty we used to torment our teachers with when we were kids. It goes something like this. Onward, upward, Mary had a go. Day by day she tied it to a rope, till at length they got a busty rope, and Miss Mary had to run behind it. We had a lot of fun with that, but do you actually know how beautiful these words are? Here's the Song of Guyana's Children by W. Hawley Bryant. Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea, so like the mountains, the sea, and the river, great, wide, and deep in our lives would we be. Onward, upward, may we ever go. Day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be. In the land of Kaiture's shining splendor, land of the palm tree, the croton and fern, we would possess all the virtues and graces, we all the glory of goodness would learn. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be. Born in the land where men sought El Dorado, land of the diamond and bright shining gold, we would build up by our faith, love, and labor God's golden city, which never grows old. Onward, upward, may we ever go. Day by day, in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street, in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins Firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins Firm.
All right. Hey, guess what? Good evening to all of you. My name is Mark Benschop, and welcome to Straight Up on 107.1 FM. The sad news is, and every day we have the sad news coming out, and especially when it hits home. And when I say when it hits home, a member of your family, a colleague, a friend, a political affiliate, or whatever, associate, sorry. These things do bring home some sort of sad moments for all of us. And so I know as of today, about 8 or maybe 9 persons have died as a result of COVID-19. Oh, yeah. Yesterday, we had about 10 persons died as a result of COVID-19. Every single day, this is what we're hearing. And so on the screen there is Imran Khan. Imran Khan, let me say something before I get to my guest this evening and give you an opportunity to share the link as well. And we do appreciate the fact that you guys are on and the fact that you guys share the link with us. Let me say this, though. Imran Khan and I haven't always seen eye to eye. We respectfully disagree with each other on some issues. There are times when I feel that more should be done in regards to the PR of the coalition, whilst they were in government or even outside of government. And I want to make this point clear. Outside of that, Imran Khan has always, and he has been very consistent at that, would message me, whether I disagree with him or not. More recently, over the past maybe year or 6 months or so, or could be just about a year, we developed this close relationship, this closer bond, so to speak, that we will communicate with each other almost every single day via WhatsApp. And one of the things Imran Khan said to me a couple days ago, he said, Benschop, you really have a heart, And I said, Imran, I am the softest of all when it comes to my heart, of all the activists you may come into contact with. He smiled. He said, you know what, Mark? I knew that. I said, when you knew that? He said, during the course of last elections, he figured that out about me, that I only behave tough, that I have a very soft heart. And Imran Khan was correct. Now, putting all of whatever little disagreement I may have had with Imran from a PR standpoint, and it's okay to disagree, this is really a sad moment for all of us, every single one of us. And it's okay to have disagreements. It happens in a democracy, but it's how you treat the others or the folks that you disagree with. Like today, my older son had a meeting with the dean of the School of Management of Yale University, who happens to be a Guyanese from Buxton, right? A Buxtonian is the dean of the School of, the School of Management of Yale University, a Buxtonian. And during their meeting, they were talking about economics and so forth. And Ryan mentioned something about an author of a book that he's currently reading, or he may have read. And the dean of the university said, oh, you read that book? I have a beef with that guy. I have beef with that guy. And it was so funny. But the reason why I'm saying this is that we may have disagreements. We may have beef with each other. But we still should not be able to lose the respect that we have for each other. And so Imran Khan is no longer with us. I'm glad that over the months we came around to understanding each other up until the end. I received several messages from Imran Khan yesterday or the day before, and it gave some sort of hope that he was fighting this COVID-19 and he wasn't prepared to give up. Unfortunately, Imran Khan passed away sometime a little after 1 o'clock, 1 a.m. today. My condolences to the relatives, his wife, Tammy, and a speedy recovery to Tammy, his mom, his mother-in-law, and everyone. And especially also to the members of the People's National Congress Reform and the coalition partners as well, the AFC. My condolences to all of them, every single one of them. Give me 1 minute before I get to Aubrey Norton. And I'm going to say this straight up. The PPP is responsible for all of these deaths. Why I say that? It is simply because they do not care about citizens. They just do not give a damn about citizens. They don't care. Imagine they're talking about building 15 and 20 and 30 hotels. Imagine they're talking about business coming to Guyana and all these things. But not once have we heard from them about putting proper equipment like CT scan machines and all these different things at the COVID-19 hospital at Lilliandale. Not once have we heard from them that they are going to have free testing centers around the country so that citizens can walk into a health center or hospital and get a free PCR test. Not once. Not once. Shame on the PPP. Shame on the installed regime of Guyana. Shame on them. Shame on Frank Anthony. Shame on Irfan Ali. Shame on them. $1 million grant, US dollars, they're getting from the government of Japan. And now they're talking about spending that $1 million. Now they're talking about buying some equipment for the COVID-19 hospital. Now they're talking about that with a $1 million grant, yet they get billions they're giving out to Gaisuko, yet they get billions of dollars in this flood relief that they bring to their friends and their cronies and their family members. Billions of dollars cash grants that still thousands of people still have their pink slips. Shame. Shame on these vagabonds. Shame on them. So the other thing, they're shaming the victims. They're making this thing look that because people are unvaccinated, that they are responsible for their deaths. The regime have no proper plan in combating this COVID-19 pandemic. Don't blame the victim or victims. Blame yourselves in the PPP. I'm sick and I'm tired of them. I don't know if Aubrey Norton and all of you, I don't know if Aubrey Norton is sick and tired of them, but we are all sick and tired. But I put my head on the block that Aubrey Norton is also sick and tired of them. Look at what's happening there. CN Sharma is currently, according to this news here, in a critical condition. I spoke with his wife earlier, Savitri Sharma, and she said that he is in a stable condition. He is not in a critical condition. He is in a stable condition. Mr. Aubrey Norton, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Mark, and good evening to your listening, viewing audience.
To begin with, Imran Khan, your take, sir. It's no longer with us.
Well, first of all, permit me to extend sympathy to the family, friends, and to the entire coalition family. I have worked with Imran in the Leader of the Opposition office. I can attest to his competence and importantly, I can attest to the fact that he is a very easy person to get along with. His loss is one that will be felt for a very, very long time. His ability to conceptualize issues and then formulate them in language in a way that it can meet its target audience is one thing that I commended him for. And it's unfortunate that we would have lost Imran, and I believe the damage is irreparable. Once again, condolences to his family.
Condolences indeed to his family, his wife Tammy, his mother-in-law, his mother, and others, his colleagues as well. CN Sharma also, a speedy recovery to CN Sharma and all the other persons at the COVID-19 hospital. We've been hearing, Mr. Norton, some very, very horrible stories about things at the COVID-19 hospital. What have you been hearing and what is your take?
Well, we have been hearing about inadequate staff. We've been hearing about no proper treatment. But I think we have to look at it in a wider context. The issue of COVID was never handled properly by the government. First, they came to power as doubting Thomases, suggesting that COVID wasn't real. And then they tended to change their position. That, I think, created a credibility crisis surrounding COVID. Now, I believe if you're a government, your first task is really to analyze the problem, understand what is needed to solve the problem, look at the solutions you would have identified, see the positive and negatives, and then work to ensure you accelerate the positive and attenuate the negatives. I do not believe the government has the capacity to do analysis, find solutions, and then implement them. In fact, I believe that the government does not focus on proper policy formulation at all. And once you don't do proper policy formulation, you're not likely to get proper programs and projects. Now, in the case of the handling of COVID, I believe that the People's Progressive Party took two approaches to COVID. First, a transactionalist one. What can we benefit from COVID? What resources we can garner from the international community? What money we can accumulate from COVID? And that is what caused both the COVID relief fund and the flood relief to be marred in corruption, because the focus has never been on people. The focus has always been what the PPP and its corrupt elite can get out of COVID. And this is most manifest in the absence of a proper public relations campaign to sensitize people and to seek to influence them to be vaccinated. Again, one has not seen an attempt to put proper incentives in place to cause people to want to vaccinate. But probably the worst thing that they did was very early they began the process, or they stopped the process of providing information on COVID deaths and general statistics as they relate to COVID. So we're in a position now where we don't know whether it is whatever strand they call it, because there's no information provided on it. We don't have data to suggest what are the ill effects of which vaccine, which vaccine hasn't been efficacious, which vaccine hasn't been effective, etc. And because they are afraid of data and data analysis, these numbers jump up on us as they start to tell us what is happening. The most I will say here is that COVID is the handling of COVID is a manifestation of the PPP's incompetence. When they attempted to open schools, one would have thought that the smallest child will know, based on the information, that they had to be this proper sanitization of schools, and they had to have at minimum all schools with flowing water. They did not do that, and we see schools that were open got to be closed. As it relates to equipment for the ICU at Lilliandale, I didn't expect them to go down that road because they ran Guyana before and they never showed an interest in equipping hospitals, etc., with the requisite equipment to deliver. In fact, based on their link to the private sector or some sections of the private sector, they believe that those things should go in the direction of the private sector and that their cronies will benefit, even if it's at the expense of the people of Guyana. When it comes to the general involvement of the people, again, the PPP is found lacking. And so they approach COVID as if it is a partisan political issue, and they did not involve the opposition and other stakeholders. And so you do not have a comprehensive approach to dealing with COVID. The consequence of that is high instances of death. Guyana's death rate is above the international average. And therefore, unless we can get the PPP to understand that COVID is real, it is bigger than one political party, and that it affects Guyanese directly, unless we can get them to understand that and change course, we're in for deep trouble in Guyana.
All right, well said. Sorry about that. Our technical operator fell asleep. Mr. Aubrey Norton, still sticking to the COVID-19 pandemic and what's happening, especially at the COVID hospital, as they call it there at Lilliandale, compliments of the coalition government. Had it not been for the coalition government seeing it fit to have this hospital, God in heaven knows how many more persons would have succumbed as a result of the coronavirus. But look at the condition there. Patients have been complaining every single day. Patients are complaining about the treatment at that hospital, short of staff, and all these different things. I want to have you and our listeners, Mr. Norton, to listen quickly to this message from a nurse. She died, Miss Maynard, Vanessa Maynard. She died over a week ago, and it was horrible. Listen to this, and there's a reason for this, because as you have indicated, and as we all know, the install regime is not concentrating on equipment in that place. Here's what the late nurse Maynard mentioned just prior to her death. Yep, sorry about that, Miss. Yep.
Nothing to eat, and they turn on the light and down. So the little fella there giving out treatment and nothing, right? Give the medication, the in, then the bag, or medication and drink it. But my stomach empty. So they don't have nothing for you. Just this insulin, turn off the lights when she died. They don't give me nothing, just come in here, no treatment. And I ordered them all me, no treatment. And the police also come in last night. So they see the doctor, I review my time, and then gonna start treatment from there. Oh my God, nice of my treatment.
All right. Mr. Norton, I'm not sure how much you heard, but Nurse Vanessa Maynard, she's complaining about the treatment, about the food, the fact that she's been ignored. And constantly, I've been hearing about that sort of complaints there at the COVID-19 hospital. What is your take, sir, on what you just heard?
Well, it does appear listening to people that most people believe the place is a death trap. It is not aimed at dealing with COVID. It's a death trap. Now, I know of a case where a doctor's father, it is alleged, is in the COVID hospital and he was not allowed to visit him. I thought one being a medical doctor might be they might be disposed to let the person visit. Now, in my opinion, the very nature of COVID and the fact that there are restrictions to ensure that the pandemic doesn't spread creates the conditions for what is happening there. We have to find there must be mechanisms put in place for people to be able to monitor what is happening there and to rectify the problems. And I don't think it can happen under Frank Anthony. It is clear that Frank Anthony is incompetent and has no consistency when it comes to policy. First, he said nobody will be forced. Then you end up forcing people. So I think there's a real dilemma because a lot of what occurs at the hospital occurs in secrecy in the name of the pandemic. And it is also clear to me that the government uses the pandemic as a means of repression to deprive people of the rights of doing certain things under the guise of curbing or curtailing the pandemic. But whatever is their intention, we're getting the direct opposite, the spread. And if one looks at their approach to businesses, one sees that, again, the aim is not the health and safety of people. The aim is to use COVID restrictions in such a way that the business community can continue to do business, but that if anybody challenges the system, then COVID rules will kick in. So the approach to COVID is not one that is aimed at dealing with the pandemic. It is one in which you shout vaccine, vaccinate, 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 and then there is no evidence that they have the required amounts of vaccines. I am 99.5% sure that if a lot of the people who are skeptical about getting vaccinated decide tomorrow morning that they will vaccinate, there will be a shortage. And so it's a sad state, but it's the real situation. COVID has not been treated as a pandemic in which the government will put the requisite mechanisms and resources in place to ensure it is dealt with and we halt the increase in the number of cases. And so we will have to find ways and means of removing the secrecy and to get in a multi-stakeholder approach that analyzes the situation, identify what needs to be done, and to ensure that the focus is on caring for the patients, providing them with the institutions with the equipment they need, and putting the resources into fighting the pandemic rather than creating conditions propitious for people to get rich. The fact that they would have chosen a middleman to get Sputnik in itself tells you the story. So we're in a real dilemma. And if one had hoped that Frank Anthony will be made accountable, then your hopes are dashed by the existence of a president who himself appears to be incompetent in every regard. And so we have a real dilemma. We do not have a government that takes policy formulation seriously. And once your policies are not properly formulated, implementation will run into problem, and we will end up where we are. Guyana, in which COVID is on the increase. Resources for COVID are going in all directions into private pockets, etc. Institutions are ill-equipped, and the government with a PR machinery hoping that public relations will quell or change the reality. The public relations relating to COVID is virtually restricted to billboards, which PPP people make money on, and little or no proper educational sensitizing program. We are really in deep trouble, and the incompetence of the PPP is manifested in dealing with COVID. And don't let us not forget that while they were in opposition and fighting to come to government, they said they had a program and a plan, or a plan and a program. It turned out that they had none. And what has happened is the pandemic in Guyana has turned for the worse.
In fact, they have no plans. We're having slight, maybe internet difficulties. Don't know if it's by Mr. Aubrey Norton's end or whichever end. All right, so the COVID-19 pandemic, it seemed to be taking up a lot of time these days, and it's quite for a good reason, because people are dying, and the PPPC regime, the installed regime, obviously they do not give a damn. Are you, Mr. Norton, at all concerned? I bet you are, that this very incompetent Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, has 3 advisors who are being paid millions of dollars, yet they're so incompetent.
Well, first of all, they proved incompetent when they were ministers. Both of them were ministers at the time when Georgetown Hospital had a high maternal death rate. Both of them were ministers when the medical system didn't have drugs. Both of them were ministers when the situation in the various hospitals vis-a-vis equipment was terrible. And if you take a failure to advise someone, the end product will be failure. I cannot see how Ramsamy and Ramsaranberry can advise anybody when they themselves have been failures. What the PPP has done is to recycle the old core. And once you recycle the old core, you will bring back the old failures. And I think all that we're seeing is a manifestation of the fact that there is a dearth, a real shortage of ability in the People's Progressive Party. And even if they shift them around, they will be shifting one incompetent to another incompetent, and the cycle will continue. I believe that the solution here lies in a government that chooses people to lead based on merit, a government that recognizes that it has to do serious analysis of the problems in the society and to come up with solutions and also with mechanisms for implementation. Because you can have the solution, but if you lack the capacity to implement, then you wouldn't get the desired outcome. And so the PPP is reflective of a leadership crisis. If one goes through the history of the PPP, one will see that there is no real successful project that they would have had. Skeldon Estate, sad movies. The East Coast Road, sad movies. You name it. The most difficult thing for the People's Progressive Party to do is to show a proper program that they conceptualized, implemented, and it was successful. There is virtually none. Let's not touch Amelia Falls, which was a disaster, and they are returning to. Let us not touch the Guyana police force, which could not solve crime for two reasons. One, the PPP's own link to crime, and two, the fact that they didn't give them the requisite training. And so you had an increase in crime under the PPP, and we've seen a return to that increase in crime. And that is because they lack the capacity to give leadership. They lack the capacity to do anything that is outside of what they can benefit financially from. There are many projects that are left intact. For instance, the putting of the lights on the Suzdijk Linden Highway, I see they're continuing the previous government project, which I commend.
But let me say something about that. I do apologize for straightening this part out in terms of the lights on the Linden Suzdijk Highway. I thought, and maybe somebody brought it up on my show here, that the lights on the Linden Suzdijk Highway are basically GPL poles and all these different things. And I agree with you 100% that is what started under the coalition government, something that for 23 years the PPP ignored. But those lights, those poles that they're seeing there, actually belong to E-Networks. They're cable poles and not GPL poles. Continue.
Well, the general view is that they were continuing with the program to put lights. But that wouldn't surprise me, because I remember when I was a member of parliament and I raised the issue with Robeson-Ben, who was then Minister of Public Destruction. He said clearly that they're not putting any lights on the Suzdijk Linden Highway. And when the AP and UAFC came to government, it started from the Linden end and from the Suzdijk end to put lights. And I thought it would be a good thing if it is continued, because lights on the highway really will contribute to a reduction in the accidents, particularly at nights. But the main point I was making is that the People's Progressive Party has not shown the capacity to plan and to implement proper plans. At present, I said they are project hopping. I can't understand how they hope to develop Guyana without a comprehensive infrastructure plan. And then you add to it the idiocy that came out of Minister Ejil, that there is no need for an environmental assessment for the new bridge. And I saw it was repeated by Barra Jack Deo. Which major project in the world now will or should go ahead without an environmental impact assessment? And so we are seeing clearly that these people are not ready for governing Guyana. In 5 years, the APNU AFC did things that the PPP didn't do in 23 years. And one reason there was that level of success was that for sure there wasn't the level of corruption that occurred under the PPP. And so more money went into projects. And like I said to some people, there is another issue that affects Guyana terribly. And it is the discriminatory way that the government approaches everything. We need a Guyana in which all Guyanese are treated equally. We need a Guyana in which the benefit from oil and gas should extend to all the people of Guyana. And Irfan Ali Mountain One Guyana is clearly garbage, because when you look at the reality, he is creating two Guyanas. Look at COVID and you see two Guyanas. Look at the flood relief and you see two Guyanas. Look at the approach to crime when is the Henry Boys and now Boston, and you see two Guyanas. So Irfan Ali must not come telling people garbage. The acts of the People's Progressive Party are clear acts of discrimination. And what they are doing is dividing Guyana rather than seeking to develop Guyana. And I want to make it clear. A lot of Indo-Guyanese meet me on the road and tell me, up to yesterday, I was talking to 3 young Indo-Guyanese, and they are concerned. So it is not as if they are representative of the Indo-Guyanese community. They are representative of a wealthy, corrupt clique. But the mass of Indo-Guyanese are not benefiting. They are facing the same high cost of living that African Guyanese are facing, that indigenous people are facing. And so a focus has to be placed on mobilizing those Indo-Guyanese who believed that the PPP would have delivered, but now recognize that they are all for themselves and the small elite, and that the people of Guyana, regardless of ethnicity, they are not benefited. And that is compounded when it comes to the Afro-Guyanese community, because it's not only their incompetence, it is also their discrimination. So it is my considered view that the people of Guyana are daily recognizing that a PPP government is not a government for the people of Guyana. It is not a government for the development of Guyana. It's a transactionalist government that gets into projects to see what they can make. And that is the priority. And Guyana cannot develop like that. Then they have a strategy of bribing. Bribery wouldn't work. People will take the money, but then people will know what the reality is on the ground. And you know what is interesting? When the APNU AFC was in government, there were those who were linked to the PPP illegalities, particularly young Afro-Guyanese, who used to tell you, man, let the drugs flow. We used to make little money, blah, 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 and they're going on. Many of them are now telling you that they are not making money regardless. And so I think the PPP's approach to governance has placed it on a course of self-destruction, and that it is just for us to mobilize and organize and take on the People's Progressive Party, get a new voters list, get a proper elections commission going, and the PPP will be history. That is my honest view.
All right, 46 minutes after 9 o'clock, Mr. Aubrey Norton is giving you his views on a heck of a lot of things this evening. And don't forget that Mr. Aubrey Norton is also running for the leadership of the People's National Congress reform. That Congress should be held sometime before the end of this year, but we'll get into that just now. To the PPP's credit, and we've got to be honest, we've got to be very, very honest. It's not like we don't want to give them credit right here on 107.1 FM. I'd like to give the PPP some credit, and here goes. Credit for the fiber optic cable. That has cost billions of dollars, went down the drain. We give them credit for that destruction. Many of you remember the One Laptop per Family program, right? We give them credit for that also. Destruction. Hundreds of millions of dollars went down the drain. We also give them credit for the drug trade. Soon as they got back into office, look at what happened. A big bust, about 2 or 3 tons of cocaine in Belgium, right? Give them credit for that. We also got to give them credit for persecuting people. Look at what they did to the folks at the Guyana Elections Commission. Miss Roxanne Myers, Lowenfield, Keith Lowenfield, Mr. Mingo, and others. We got to give them credit for persecuting people and hauling them before the courts. Trevor Benn and scores of others. Every day we see that. So those are the things they get credit for. Practicing racism, discrimination, extrajudicial killings, back again. Executions, back again. That is the PPP for you guys. I don't know. We got to give them credit for those things. And they're back again. Now let's go to some other subject matters. But before we get into some other questions for Mr. Aubrey Norton, this is what's happening, Aubrey. In Linden, we are told that former member of parliament, Ms. Vanessa Kisoon, here's what we're hearing here. That Priya Manik-Chan has ordered for Ms. Kisoon, Vanessa Kisoon, to be evicted from the teachers' quarters in Linden. What's happening there? And what is your take on this information?
Well, I am a Lindener, and I know the history of those houses. Those houses are for teachers. And for instance, when I went to Mackenzie High School, teachers that came from out of town lived in those houses. While people associate Vanessa Kisoon with Linden, she originated in Plaisance, is a teacher in Linden, and I believe that she is legally entitled to live in a teacher's apartment in Linden. But what worries me is that a minister of education that cannot get the education system right, that cannot get the opening of schools correct vis-a-vis COVID, has the time to focus on an individual who is contributing to the education of our children. Now, when you are supposed to be involved in policy formulation and you are involved in trivial detail, your ministry will end up just where it is, manifest incompetence. This is a minister who could not get the English and maths grades and number of passes up in her previous sojourn. And rather than focusing on the proper reopening of schools and the proper preparation of children, etc., and side by side with that, preparing the situation, preparing the education system to be able to do virtual training, because outside of COVID, there are positives to virtual training. For instance, You might have a school in the Rupununi that doesn't have a math teacher, but you can use a math teacher from, say, somewhere in Georgetown or on the coast to teach those children. Those are the issues she should be focusing on. But I just think she's trivial. And I think the people of Linden should stand up and ensure Vanessa Kissoon stays in the House. I see no need for the ministry to be seeking to push her out the House. It makes no sense to me, but a lot of things don't make sense when it comes to the PPP.
A lot of things really don't make sense when it comes to the PPP. So true. Lindeners should put boots on the ground and ensure that Ms. Vanessa Kissoon, former member of parliament, and someone who has been has not been reinstated as a member of the People's National Congress, reform. According to what she said, she was asked to apologize for what? God in heaven knows what. But were you to be elected leader of the People's National Congress, reform, how will you treat situations such as Vanessa Kissoon and I believe Mr. Sharma Solomon is in the same situation, and maybe others?
I think there are two different cases. I think Sharma, I don't know if he applied, but he can apply. Look, for me, it's a simple issue. Vanessa Kissoon, Sharma Solomon have contributed to the party. They did nothing, in my opinion, that warrants expulsion. And once I'm leader of the party, all they would need to do is fill up their form and they'd be back in the party. In my opinion, they are back in the party, though they might not be exercising financial membership. Because really and truly, the party constitution is clear. A disciplinary committee should be set up, which I said at the time, to deal with the issue. And I do not know of a situation where Vanessa and Sharma have been disciplined. They have not been disciplined, and therefore they should be active in the party. I don't see it as an issue.
Not an issue at all. She has been suspended for many years now. As a central executive member of the party, have you once brought that up to the other members and the leadership of the party to have them reinstated?
Yes, I was at a meeting in Linden with members of the central executive where it was brought up, and I think at that meeting, Vanessa was told to reapply. I don't know what happened since then. But for me, really, it's a non-issue. Vanessa Kissoon has done nothing that warranted her out being the party, neither did Sharma Solomon. So that is easy solution.
Let me ask you something, Mr. Norton, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir. Fact check me almost right away. You were once expelled from the PNC.
Never was.
You never were. That's why I asked. I know that you've had a slight disagreement with Mr. Hoyt. So my apologies. I thought for some reason you were expelled. Hence, I wanted to find out the reason or what you did to be reinstated.
I was never expelled from the PNC. If you go back to what had happened under Mr. Hoyt, a $20 membership had expired. And he merely said that I wasn't a member of the party because of the $20, but that's history. And it turned out that I paid it up and I continue to be a member of the party. I've always argued that nobody can put me out the PNC. I spent most of my life there and I am PNC. I believe it is the only party that has the capacity to take on the People's Progressive Party and beat them and govern Guyana better. And regardless of what happened, I've always stayed in the PNC. If I disagree with a leader or leaders, I make my point known because I'm not somebody who think you're wrong and will tell you you're right. I will tell you like it is. And so for that, some people are uncomfortable, but it's the nature of the political world. If all of us say yes, and the boat going down the falls, we all will die. There must be those who look at it and say, I disagree. In fact, one of the things I hope to bring to leadership in the party or to restore to the leadership of the party is a situation in which people can become involved in healthy debate, disagree, find a consensus, and move on. If all of us are to think the same way, we will go nowhere. If, however, there is an exchange of views, we look at the negative and positive of it, and then as leader, you say that these are the positives, and you come up with a consensus position, then you can move forward. The years of one or two persons deciding what a political party should do, those days are over. We need a new approach to governance in which people are involved, they give their perspective from their position, we discuss them, and then we work out how we move forward. There are many times I would write an article and I send it to people to look at and tell me what they think. And on many occasions, they will come back with things that I didn't recognize. I worked with a man named Rashley Jackson. And with Rashley Jackson, you prepare the paper, you discuss it, you disagree, you then agree, and you have one document. Now, that to me is an enlightened approach. We cannot operate as if any individual has a monopoly on knowledge. I always tell people, if I write 6 on a paper and put it on a desk, and I am sitting this side and you're sitting on the other side, what I will see is 6, what you will see is 9. We see different things from different positions and perspectives. And to really do what we need to do and deal with the People's Progressive Party, we need all the views, all hands on deck, clear discussions, and we need to avoid those who believe that they alone have the solution to problems. I believe Burnham tried, Rodney, Jagan, Desmond Hoyt. I'll have to stop there. But they all, as they had discussions, etc., made solutions, made approaches, and some turn out to be good, some turn out to be not so good. So we have got to always keep an open mind and engage people, discuss with them, and try and find the best solutions for Guyana. There is no panacea. There is no silver bullet that will solve the problems. And the best way is our collective intellect congealed into a unified position.
There are 2 questions. It's 9:59, but you're not going to go just yet. You're not going to go just yet. I'll ask you these 2 questions, then we'll take a quick break so we could grab a glass of water or something. The PPP installed regime, you have indicated earlier, and as we all know, that they have refused thus far to include the main opposition, the coalition, in this COVID-19 task force. Obviously, they have something to hide, the PPP, that is, something to hide from the Guyanese public. Oftentimes, politicians like yourself, and others, other leaders of the coalition have been saying that the PPP, in calling them, in doing nothing, the PPP doesn't want to include them in this task force. Were you to become leader of the People's National Congress reform, other than complaining that you're not hearing or you're not getting to join the task force, what would you do that is different than what is being done now?
First of all, you have to improve your research capability so that you can expose them. They don't like being exposed. The second thing, you have to organize your political party in a way that at the click of a finger, you can mobilize against them and put them under political pressure. I will do that. The other thing I think one will have to do is to not only be critical of what they do, but to offer alternative approaches so that you give the electorate an opportunity to look at what you're saying alternatively and to decide whether your proposals are better. And then I believe that when one looks at what is happening in Guyana, one has to focus on pulling the youth into the political process because they will be significant in terms of building the pressure against the People's Progressive Party. In a nutshell, I want to say this to you. I will have to organize the PNC in such a way that it can be used intellectually to expose the PPP, organizationally to confront them, and politically to ensure that we are proffering better ideas and approaches and place the PPP back to the wall. I think their backs are already to the wall, and that is because of their incompetence and their own part of self-destruction. All I will do is help that process on.
All right, Mr. Aubrey Norton here. You're listening to him. He's a politician indeed. He's running for political leadership of his party, the People's National Congress Reform. He has been around on the block for a while. He has been a member of parliament. He was the general secretary of the People's National Congress Reform. Well, the People's National Congress back then, I think they changed their name sometime in 2000 or 2001, Mr. Norton, to Reform.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah. And so he's been around on the block for a while. He wants to be your leader of the People's National Congress Reform. Congress should be around the corner. We're hearing that. The party seems to be helter-skelter, so to speak. That's from the outside looking in, helter-skelter. From the support base and so forth and so on, helter-skelter. You may not have in the past, and maybe now, not seeing eye to eye with some of your members senior members within the party. How would you heal this sort of wound were you to be elected the leader?
Well, first of all, I want to say I don't see the party as being helter-skelter. I see the party as having a strong support base. All across the country where I go, I see comrades who say to me, we are ready, we will move forward. So I don't see it as helter-skelter. I think there are divisions in all political parties, but I think there are exaggerations as it relates to the divisions in the party. Many of us in the party, like in any party, will disagree. But many of us also work together for the common good. I believe that for a number of reasons, and I should say this before, after elections, except you're a totalitarian dictatorial party, there will always be discussions and disagreements over why you are out of power. And I believe some of that did occur in the PNC. Now, there were divisions after we lost in 1992, and the party regrouped, organized itself, and regained power. I don't believe there are the kinds of divisions now in 2021 like they were in 1992. And in fact, a lot of the persons who were on the outside of the party are back in the party, and what they're merely looking for is leadership. I am prepared to go there, give the leadership. The major forces in the party, I am comfortable with them. I am prepared to work with the major forces. we must not run away with this view that the party should have only followers, people who say yes. If a party is going to be effective, its leaders must have constituencies. It must have people that are following them. It is up to the leader of the party to understand those constituencies and organize the party in such a way that it brings together those constituencies and they all operate in the interest of the party. That is what I set out to do. And I have been in discussion and contact with many people in the party who are prepared to work together to ensure we see the back of the People's Progressive Party. I believe what is needed is leadership that is tolerant of a different view. One of the things I admired about Forbes Burnham was you went to him with a different view, and he allowed you to give your view. And then you ended up in a debate. And by the time the debate was over, you had an agreement as to where you should go. That needs to be the characterizing feature of the party. There are many bright people in the PNC. At Central Executive, we have been having healthy debates. We have been having disagreements, as we will, but we also make agreements and move forward. And that is what we will do. So I do not see the difference of views as necessarily a rift in the party. It is what it is, different of views, and it's for leadership to discuss with those various persons and come to a common understanding as to how we move forward. And then when we come to the wider coalition, the same is true. There is clearly a need for more discussions at the level of the coalition and agreements on the way forward, because the coalition will be a combination of people. Some people believe you should protest. Some people believe you shouldn't protest. Some people believe you should protest and fight parliamentary. Some people believe you should only be involved in parliamentary politics. It is now the task of the leader and the leadership to guide that process and to show people the benefits of parliamentary democracy, the benefits of protesting, the benefits of standing up to a corrupt, racist regime, and then you work out the platform of how you move forward. I think that can be achieved.
All right, 8 minutes after 10 o'clock, Aubrey Norton here with us, discussing his political campaign and the fact that he wants to be the next leader of the People's National Congress reform. There are some other persons who have indicated that they, once nominated, that they will run for that leadership as well. I'm sure, Mr. Norton, you are open for a debate so that the people, whether it's 5 of you guys contesting, whether it's 10 of you guys contesting, you're not going to run away from a debate with the other contenders, are you?
Well, if I took on the PPP, including Nandalal, in a debate, why will I run from anybody in my party?
Well, it's not like Anil Nandalal is much to debate anyways. My 9-year-old son can debate.
No, I was making the point that he is a political opponent outside of the party. And therefore, I'm prepared to take anybody on in a debate. In the PNCR, I was one of the persons who pushed for debates. I am always involved in the party in discussion. Even when people try to close down discussions, I've always been for discussions. And I will support a debate. I believe that people should go before the constituency and debate issues. The people who are afraid to debate are people who aren't clear in their ideas and they're hoping somebody will sponsor them to leadership. I'm not in that category.
Do you feel, because some are of the view that a younger Aubrey Norton, and we all do this when we're young people, but you're no longer the younger Aubrey Norton. It is not to say that you're no longer young, but there has been accusation that you have been somewhat less tolerant in other people's views. Is that a correct description of you, younger you? And if so, Have you gone past that? Are you now more mature in dealing with politics within your party to help heal that party?
I would say this to you. When I started in the YSM, you had the likes of Vincent Alexander, we had Robert Corbin, Brian Benjamin, John Sumner, Orrin Kerr. You couldn't be intolerant of other people's views because there were a plethora of views that you had to contend with. There are some people, when you disagree with them, they see it as intolerance. I will admit that in all of us, there is some amount of intolerance. But I do not believe that I was ever intolerant of ideas to the point where I want to close down people's ideas. As a lecturer at the University of Guyana, no student got an A from me if they didn't have the analytical ability to challenge the ideas they would have read and come up with their own ideas. I told a student who had a B, when the student asked me, why not an A? I said, I've seen everything that you would have read. I've seen, repeated some of the notes I've given. What I haven't seen in it is you, that analytical ability. And I believe we should always encourage people to critically analyze things, disagree, and move forward. There was a time among us in the YSM when we disagreed with things we agreed with just to get an argument because we had like debating. So I don't believe I am intolerant. I think I can sometimes use rough language, which I am seeking to attenuate, or I have attenuated over the years. But I also believe that language should be appropriate to the occasion, and not always attenuation of language is best. Sometimes you need the hard language because when you give the nice language, people might believe that you're joking. And so to me, the use of language must be dependent on the extant situation.
Now, let me ask you this. As a politician, a former member of parliament, general secretary, and so forth of the People's National Congress, during your years as a politician, what are two mistakes you probably made as a politician that you can reflect back on and say, maybe you should have done it differently?
One, I would say, in my youth, I lived in an ideal world. And once I believe it, I go after it. And so you didn't analyze the chances of its success. And I believe that was one of the things I had to overcome. This belief that here is a view, and you're pushing the view, but you fail to recognize, while it might be a good view, the conditions aren't propitious to the view. And therefore, you have to either create the condition or wait in the condition. That is one of the things that I have reviewed. The second thing I would say that I would have done differently, I think in the early phases of my politics, I focused a lot on groundwork, but didn't spend much time intellectualizing. I think I have arrived at the point now where I recognize any one of the two extremes not good. And so I have been in more recent times blending work on the ground with intellectual work. A kind of years ago they used to call it, I don't remember the term now, but it was like a combination of a theory and praxis. That's the word. Kind of a praxis. Praxis.
All right. It looks as though we're going to be going a little longer than expected for good reasons. Mr. Aubrey Norton is vying to become the next leader of the People's National Congress Reform, and we want to be able to hear the views of all the persons, serious persons who are contending or contesting. Sorry, Mr. Norton. Let me ask you this here: there are some folks who believe don't have what it takes to have crossover votes, to have thousands of people, those PPP people who are affected by bad policies of the PPP, and others who might be sitting on the fence. Some of these folks believe that you just have the rank and file support of the rank and file people of the PNC reform, the grassroots people, that is. How do you respond to that? That you do not have, or you would not be able to have sufficient crossover vote to win an elections?
Well, first of all, there are some assumptions there that we need to deal with. You're assuming that crossover votes has an ethnic dimension. Crossover votes can cut across ethnicity. You can have Amerindian crossover votes. You can have Indo-Guyanese crossover votes and Afro-Guyanese. Crossover meaning essentially people who didn't vote for you, who will not vote the next time. Secondly, there's a fallacy, and I know the people who preach it. I lectured at the University of Guyana, and I worked with young Indo-Guyanese who I trained, who I taught at the university, and many of them I have had a very good relationship with post-University of Guyana. In fact, at present, I'm in discussion with some young Indo-Guyanese who are dissatisfied with the situation, who have indicated a willingness to support me. Now, as it relates to crossover votes, I believe once you have a proper message, you come over to people as genuine, you can get crossover votes. There are those who try to paint people as racist. And so those people tend to want to push you in a particular direction. Every Indo-Guyanese I meet on the road and we start to talk, I ask them a simple question. Identify one thing that I did in my university life, my political life, that can be considered racist. No one has come up with any. A senior former public servant called me and we were talking, and the person said that, look, this person is Indo-Guyanese. We like you, but the concern is that some people in the PNC are telling them that if I lead the party, they will be just political protests. And I said, look, that is basic nonsense. I have always been involved in political protests because I believe it's part of the democratic process. But to carry it past that can only be political wickedness. So I am not worried about attracting people who are traditionally not PNC. In fact, I have a particular strategy. People forget that in the 1997 elections and another election, I worked with the Indo-Guyanese community to bring people to the party, and we did have some successes. I believe that once people think you are genuine, once people believe you have the interests of Guyana at heart, and once people believe you know what you're about and can give leadership, they will follow you. And that is the road I intend to go down. I am not worried. There are some people who believe winning crossover votes is being weak. And then the PPP has this view. The persons they want are people who must have been in corruption so that they have something on them so they can control them. I understand that they are working on that for the upcoming Congress. Now, I believe one of my strengths is that I'm not compromised. And not being compromised, not being involved in illegalities, I think are qualities that the so-called, or for the want of a better word, the crossover votes would be interested in. So I believe I can pull crossover votes, but I also believe that your success is not solely dependent on crossover votes. It is dependent on your organization of your party. It is dependent on your ability to increase your support base turnout. And it is also dependent on the kind of leadership you pull to the party that can help you also draw supporters. It is not one person that will draw supporters, it's a team. And I intend to put together a team that can draw across the board.
Aubrey Norton there for you guys, 22 minutes after 10 o'clock. I'd love to have all of the candidates right here on 107.1 FM to give them eartime, which is what we have been doing right here. We do not discriminate against any. They are here to talk and answer questions so that you, especially the members of the People's National Congress Reform who are allowed to vote during the Congress, to hear the views of all of the candidates. And at the end, they will decide who is the best person for that position. Mr. Aubrey Norton, before we go, we know that there are some folks who attended IFLAT University. Some of them have fake degrees and all these things. We know that you're a man with nothing close to that. We know that you have attended authentic universities and so forth. But give our listeners a little background of your academic accomplishments and qualifications.
Well, essentially, what I did was I went to high school. Then I proceeded to do a diploma in political science in Cuba. I came home, did a degree in political science at the University of Guyana. And then I did a master's in international relations and the environment in the United Kingdom. Outside of that, I've participated in many training programs. But while I cherish academic qualification, I cherish more my interaction with people and the things I learned from them. I believe I'm a better person from interacting with people at all levels and learning from them.
All right, fair enough. Interesting indeed. I saw a question from someone, but it's kind of like a ticklish question. You've already answered that because the people love to label people as racist when you speak out on issues. And we have seen that over the years. How would you take it and how would you feel? And what would be your defense if someone were to say that based on your political views and standing up against injustices and so forth, someone say Aubrey Norton is a racist?
Well, I've seen them write that on Facebook. But like I said, I asked them to show me one event, one issue in which my actions could be considered racist. As I understand racism, is where you believe an ethnic group or a race is lesser than you, and you also have an interest in dominating, controlling, and discriminating against them. I also draw a distinction between racism and race consciousness. I believe all races should be conscious of their race. They should know There are Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, mix, etc. They should know that. And they should recognize that they have interests which they have to pursue. But it must not be pursued at the expense of others. And in that regard, I'm clear in my head, I am no racist. And there are many Indians who I stood up for um, during my university career, in the public service. I dare anyone while I operated as presidential advisor on youth empowerment and train young people to show where I have been biased against a race or I deprived a race of accessing the training, etc., that we had. So I don't believe in practical terms. In the world of fact, anybody can raise racism against me. There was one Indian boy who told me a time, the only problem he has is that I look like Idi Amin. And I laughed because I mean you can't tell a man what to think. And so I
Hey,
laughed.
Aubrey, I gotta admit, this is the first time I'm seeing you laughing.
No, because the man
Other than when we were driving to Washington D.C. for that meeting at the State Department, the guy told
yeah,
you look like Idi Amin and you were laughing.
yes, he said I look
People
like
want to see
Idi Amin.
you, Aubrey. People want to see you
Uh-huh.
laugh a little more. So maybe
Well,
to see you laugh a little more, maybe we should say Idi Amin, and you would
Mark,
laugh.
the truth is, if they come in alignment, if they come in alignment, they can laugh all the time. But the point is, man has to adapt. A lot of times when I'm discussing serious issue, I tend to focus on the issues, and I'm not a kind of laughing, smiling person. But when there are lighter moments, I do have a good time. I like a good joke. There are many people who line with me who come to hear me talk nonsense. So it's part of life. But people create the perception from what they see in public life. But human beings are multidimensional and multifaceted, and I think I'm one of those.
All right, two more things before we go. In fact, just one. What do you do on your downtime? The kind of music you like to play? You don't like the same songs Idi Amin liked?
Well, I don't know what songs Idi Amin like.
Probably
I think I
Mozart
like
and those sort of
I
things.
I think I like music generally. But for me, music is specific. If I'm reading or studying, I like jazz in the background. If I am in the mood, I like soul music. If I feel like sporting, I want to hear reggae and soca. So there is no particular music that I like above the other one. Music to me serves certain functions. And depending on what I set out to achieve, that will determine the music. For instance, there are times when I'm driving long distances where I just feel like listening to soca or calypso or reggae, and I do it. And then another time, I just want to turn it down very low and listen to soul music or jazz. That's just me. It is determined by the activity at the time.
All right, Aubrey Norton there for you guys. If he is elected as the next leader of the People's National Congress, obviously you'll have to choose some folks to sit in certain positions. One of them being the General Secretary. Young person, female. Who do you have? What sort of person you have in mind? Let us say if you were
I,
elected.
I, I believe in this process you go in stages. The first stage is to become the leader. When we arrive at that point, we'll cross that bridge.
Thank you so much, Aubrey Norton, for your time. Thank you for the smile. Actually, I don't think you look like Idi Amin, man. I don't.
Well, I don't either, but if a man tells you that, you just bust a laugh.
Bust a laugh.
That's
Your
what
closing
that's
remarks.
what he's seeing.
Your closing
You know,
remarks, Mr. Norton.
my closing remarks are essentially this. Um, it is unfortunate that the incompetence of the government, its lack of foresight, its corruption, its divisiveness, they have all placed Guyana at a new low. And it is my sincere hope that I can do the work to ensure we shift Guyana from where it is to a Guyana in which all our people feel they are part and parcel of our country and that they have a stake in the national cake. I look forward to that day. Good evening.
All right. Thank you so much, Aubrey. What's your middle name?
My middle name?
Yeah, you have a middle name?
Yes. What do you think the C represents on the screen? It's Compton, Aubrey Compton Norton. But I became...
What sort of old man Compton?
Well, don't forget, I born 1957, I'm not a youth.
Compton.
But I developed a likeness for Aubrey C because I work with a very organized, intelligent man named Kenneth Denny.
Yeah.
Who for some reason...
He was at Stanford News too, right? Was it?
No, that's Peter Denny.
Peter Denny.
No, that is Patrick Denny. Patrick Denny. Peter was there. I'm talking to the one that used to be in labor in the trade union. Okay. He called me Aubrey C or ACN or Aubrey C Norton. So I ended up beginning to put the C in it for two reasons. At the time when I was in Havana, I didn't know that George Norton was George Aubrey. And something in the embassy I went to collect, and it was really for George Aubrey Norton rather than Aubrey Norton. And so I again became accustomed to putting AC Norton.
Just a light moment.
With Denny.
Huh? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Compton.
Thanks for having me.
It's not. Before you go, man, let us have a light moment with Aubrey. People want to see their leaders loosen up, a little laugh, a little smile now and then. I noticed somebody asked that, somebody said that you left me. All Guyanese, we know a little Chutney something. What's your favorite Chutney song, if it comes on? Let us hear it. Let us hear from you.
Well, you have to understand my thinking on Chutney. I'm one of the Guyanese who believe that the origin of Chutney is in Guyana, and that Omar Farouk, with his Indo-Afro beat, began Chutney. And the Chutney, well, I don't know if I want to call it Chutney song, but I always like the song by Sparrow, that is Sati Marajin. I don't
Marajin.
I was trying to get the name, yes. And I took a likeness to that song because of the debate that surrounded it years ago, where some persons in the Hindu community felt it was an embarrassment or an affront to the Hindu community, while others believe it was just a good mixture of Indo-Afro beat. And it is at that point I started to pay attention. And then I went back and found that Omar Farouk, the late Terry Nelson, had sung We Welcome Independence to Guyana. And then he had another song that had that Indo-Afro beat. And the ones I don't like is the ones that really rum till I die in them.
Are you serious? Those are good ones, man. Aubrey, well, rum till I die?
I tell you why I don't like them is I like the beat. I like the vibes that come from them. But even though I drink, I believe people must drink reasonably and not ever get intoxicated. And rum till I die seems to send them in the wrong direction. And so I'm not a lover of that one.
Oh,
in fact, I prefer to hear it in instrumental.
Right. Aubrey Norton, of course.
One of the persons I'd liked a lot is Dean Fraser. I don't know if you know Dean Fraser, but he's the Jamaican jazz artist that plays a lot of the reggae music in jazz. And I like him a lot.
All right. The history of Chutney started way back. It didn't start in Trinidad and Tobago. Way back
I said it is my view. It is my view.
Way back on the quarantine when Sundar Popo visited those guys at Albion
Correct.
and Rosal and Port Morant and so forth and so on. Another time, another day, we'll talk a little more about Chutney, but thank you so much for being a guest. In fact, I would say you have been a good guest this time around. Why? Because we saw you laugh. There you go. You should.
It's not the first time you saw me laugh. It's the first time you recognize it.
I've seen you. I've seen you on lots of occasions. Aubrey, thank you so much for your time, man. And again,
Thanks for having me,
condolences on the passing of Imran Khan, member of your coalition party, and I know he was a friend of yours as well. Thank you so much, Aubrey.
Thanks,
for your
thanks,
time.
Mark.
Good. Rum Till I Die. There's something about that tune. I actually do love Chutney. Don't get me wrong. I actually do love Chutney and Rum Till I Die. And Aubrey made a point about Sexy Marajin by Sparrow and how some of our Hindu brothers and sisters took umbrage to that. I recall, and the reason why I'm bringing that up, I recall there is a song by Sonny Man from Trinidad and Tobago called Lo Te Lal, Kum Lo Te Lal. Lote, you know, they didn't take umbrage to that at all. But I wonder why some took umbrage to Sexy Marajin by Sparrow. I didn't really want to go this evening, but I have to go. Continue to pray for Guyana, guys. Continue to pray for Guyana. The PPP has Guyana in a mess. A horrible, horrible situation. Continue to pray for that country. Condolences again to the wife, or the relatives, friends, colleagues of Imran Khan, who passed away today from COVID-19. Shame on the PPP regime for not having good policy, health policy in place. Shame on them. People need free COVID-19 testing throughout the country. People are dying because they don't have the financial resource to go and pay $15,000 and $25,000 for a PCR test. But the government and their cronies are sporting away money all over the place. They're going after these small, I don't want to say hustlers, but small individuals, small-time individuals who are hosting parties and arresting them, locking them up, putting them on bail. But they're not going to their friends and cronies, whether to that big spot on Brick Dam and other places, the casinos and so forth, and arrest their friends and cronies. They're not doing that. Shame on the PPP. Shame on Dr. Frank Anthony. Shame on all of them. Look at the condition of the COVID-19 hospital. They don't have a CT scan machine. They hardly have gas cylinders, mask and oxygen mask and all these different things. They don't have it. The regime is not concerned about those things. They're concerned about building hotels, short-term or long-term hotels. That is what they believe in. A bunch of political vagabonds. Shame on them. Don't worry with what they're putting up there every minute. Someone died of COVID-19. That person is unvaccinated. Don't worry about what they're saying about that. They're not telling you the true story about those who have taken one dose of the Sputnik V, that they, the PPP regime, have caused those individuals to die as a result of their negligence, as a result of their corruption, the PPP that is. Today, guess what? If hundreds of individuals want to visit the United States of America, they can't because they took the Sputnik V vaccine that they got, the PPP got from a middleman. To this day, we don't know how much hundreds of millions of dollars, your tax dollars, paid to some questionable middleman who gave you guys some questionable Sputnik V vaccines And that vaccine is not recognized by the World Health Organization. It's not recognized. And therefore, those who are visiting or planning to visit the US, they cannot enter if they have a Sputnik V vaccine. Compliments of that dotish installed PPP regime. Dotish installed PPP regime. I've got to go, man. I'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time. God bless you all. And the funeral service of Imran Khan will be held tomorrow. We will carry that live right here on 107.1 FM. God bless you all, man. God bless you all. Pray for Guyana.
It's hard to be at peace with the ones who are so discard. It's hard. Them have a knife in your back and them smile it so broad. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. I never want to take your glory, Lord. Send your angels to encamp around about me and stand guard. To envy is so easy and to love it is so hard. Let me work for your glory and not for the award. Don't make me ever get caught up in the scream and the applause. And go talk about the blessing and not talk about the Lord. All these things are vanity. I need your reward. Let me be real. Don't put on no facade. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them give me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Sticks and stones can break my bones and words can harm me. They can harm me. When the evil come against me, you'll protect me. You'll protect me. Father, I need the strength of your son. Cause you know my work is not done. Lord, I need that endurance just to finish this race that I run. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. And help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. You tell me to stand firm, cause every little plan you have a confirm. I know them evil plan turn. In a darkness, me a the long term. So help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Jesus, help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me